47 past the hour. A judge's decision in California could have an impact on teachers across the country. The ruling declared California's laws on teacher tenure and seniority unconstitutional. It says the policies, including a last-in, first-out rule, jeopardize the chance for students to succeed. The court also found that lower-income and minority students are most impacted by the policies. The teacher unions say they will appeal. Joining us now, MSNBC contributor Mike Barnacle. Great stuff out of D-Day. You can catch it all online. Beautiful writings. And journalist and founder of the nonprofit Parents Transparency Project, Campbell Brown. Campbell, good to have you back on the show.
Good morning, guys.
You've been following this from the get-go. This is a big deal.
This case was filed more than 2 years ago. So I've been following the case for about a year. Yes, it's a huge deal. And what's so fascinating about it is for years, these laws were politically untouchable. And the judge, in his ruling, was so unequivocal, saying that the evidence was so compelling that it shocks the conscience, declared all 5 statutes unconstitutional: tenure, LIFO, these last-in, first-out seniority rules, dismissal protections. And so potentially now you have this precedent that's been set that could open the floodgates for similar litigation happening in states all over the country.
What's remarkable is in other states, teachers' tenure has actually been done away with. But here, even in the state, again, that's been sort of the bedrock of support for teachers' union. Now you have the judiciary going after. This is you're really seeing teachers' unions being challenged.
It's funny because when you actually lay out what the laws do and what they mean, I think to most people it's common sense.
Well, like
what the judge
Give us a quick example.
Well, like tenure after 18 months, which was the law in California, which means after 18 months, a teacher essentially has permanent employment, where they're not even being evaluated anymore at that stage. The last-in, first-out seniority rules in California, the most egregious example of how that plays out is the teacher of the year was laid off, where much more ineffective teachers were kept on. And then these dismissal protections, and we have similar laws here in New York, make it so hard and so expensive to remove a grossly ineffective teacher, and in some cases an abusive teacher, that we have people still on the payroll here in New York. They do the same thing in California, who've been found guilty of inappropriate sexual behavior with kids.
And Willie, this is a lot of the arguments about the VA. It's impossible to fire somebody at the VA. A lot of teachers, a lot of parents have gotten angry at just how, what tenure does, that it doesn't make it as competitive as others. It looks like things might be changing.
Well, we talk about modernizing the education system, right, and making it better and more efficient. Well, the idea that you couldn't fire someone who's not performing well is antithetical to that. If you went to a private company or to Apple or Google or somewhere, the best people move up and the best people survive. So maybe this is a step in the right direction. Do you see this happening now in other states, Campbell? Are there places where this kind of litigation is pending?
Not yet. I don't think other cases have been filed yet, but probably will be. And I think people see an opportunity here where for years they failed at the legislative level to change some of these laws. They've certainly tried in multiple states to get this through state legislatures. And what's interesting is that there's been this long time political alliance, obviously, between the teachers union and the Democratic Party that changed at the national level. And when this decision was announced yesterday, Arne Duncan called it a mandate for change. It was endorsed by George Miller, House Democrat. Obama's been a huge charter supporter, but at state in state legislatures at the state level, the union's still really powerful. So here you see parents being so frustrated that they're willing to go to this extreme and bypass the legislative process.
Sam Stein has a quick question. Last one. Sam, jump in.
Yeah, I confess I haven't been following the issue closely, but Campbell, can you tell me exactly what the law was that was violated, what the law was that was ruled unconstitutional?
There were 5 statutes in California that dealt with teacher tenure, which is automatic permanent employment after 18 months in California.
Yeah.
The last-in, first-out seniority rules, which mean, obviously, that seniority defines how layoffs take place. And then dismissal protections that are similar to the ones we have on the books here in New York that give teachers multiple appeals that go way beyond due process.
Why were they ruled unconstitutional? What law did they violate?
Well, the way it works in California is that the defense in this case had to prove that there was a reason for these laws to be on the books. So the burden was actually on the defense here, and the judge decided that these laws have and this is a really important point to make, because this is at the heart of what it was really about. The judge said that they have a disproportionate effect on minority kids, on the poorest and most disadvantaged kids, because they end up with the newest teachers who tend to be the least effective.
Sam, the judge basically said that poor children in many school districts in California weren't getting equal access to quality education. But the ripple effect, the potential ripple effect of this, isn't it that part of this was funded by a very wealthy Silicon Valley executive, the lawsuit in California? So what's the potential for this becoming a national movement?
Well, I mean, at the heart of it is parents. You know, yes, that's where the funding came from, but it was 9 families who had to go through this. And think about the courage that it took. They had to go before a judge. They had to be very public in explaining what was going on in their classroom, naming their teacher, what was happening, why they thought they were getting a bad education. And then many of these students were still in that school, still dealing with those teachers when all of this was going on. So you can have all the money in the world, but unless parents are willing to step forward and be plaintiffs, parents and students, then these cases aren't going to come forward. So, you know, I hear the teachers union when they say this is being, you know, run by a bunch of very wealthy people who are trying to change these laws, but the fact of the matter is nothing happens unless parents are so frustrated with the system that they're willing to step forward and see this through. This was 2 years of their life, and at the end of it, you know, all they have to gain is hopefully a better education for their kids.
Campbell Brown, thank you so much. Great to have you on the show.
Good to see you guys.
Coming up, GM in crisis.